I still remember the small town where I grew up, surrounded by rolling hills and a community that felt like family. It was a place where everyone knew each other's names, and the local diner served as the town's gathering spot. I was a curious child, always fascinated by the way things worked and the people who made them happen. My parents, though not entrepreneurs themselves, encouraged my inquisitive nature, fostering an environment that allowed me to explore and learn. As I grew older, my interest in business and entrepreneurship began to take shape. I would spend hours listening to stories of successful startups and the people behind them, dreaming of one day creating something of my own. The idea of building a company from scratch, of solving real problems and making a difference in people's lives, resonated deeply with me. I felt an insatiable hunger to learn, to understand the intricacies of the business world, and to find my place within it. It was during my college years that the conception of my startup idea began to take form. I was surrounded by like-minded individuals, each with their own unique experiences and perspectives. Together, we would brainstorm, sharing ideas and challenging each other to think bigger. My startup idea was born out of a simple yet profound realization: the need for innovation in a specific sector that had been stagnant for years. I saw an opportunity to disrupt the status quo, to bring about change through technology and determination. The early days of my startup were marked by initial struggles and self-doubt. There were times when the uncertainty of my venture's future felt overwhelming, and the fear of failure lingered in the shadows. However, it was during these moments that I drew upon the lessons learned from my mentors and the support of my loved ones. They reminded me of the importance of perseverance, of pushing through the hardships, because it's in those moments that we discover our true potential. My first office space was humble, a small room in a shared building where dreams were made and broken. It was here that I spent countless hours, pouring my heart and soul into my startup. The walls of that room heard my laughter and my tears, my victories and my defeats. It was a space that witnessed my growth, not just as an entrepreneur, but as a person. As I reflect on those early days, I am reminded of the entrepreneurial mindset that drove me forward. It was a mindset built on resilience, adaptability, and a relentless pursuit of innovation. I believed in my idea, in the difference it could make, and in myself. And it was this belief that carried me through the darkest of times, that pushed me to keep going even when the journey seemed impossible. But little did I know, my greatest challenge was yet to come. A challenge that would test my resolve, my leadership, and my very belief in myself. I was about to face my first major setback, one that would make me question everything I thought I knew about myself and my capabilities. I was told I wasn't CEO material, a statement that would become a pivotal moment in my journey, a moment that would define my future and the future of my company. I still remember the countless nights I spent perfecting my pitch, rehearsing every word, every gesture, every statistic. I was convinced that my startup idea was revolutionary, that it would change the world. But as I began to share my vision with potential investors and partners, I was met with a barrage of rejection and skepticism. I attended networking events, my heart racing with anticipation, only to be dismissed by investors who didn't believe in my idea. They would nod politely, their eyes glazing over as I spoke, before eventually telling me that my concept was too risky, too unproven. I was told that I didn't have the right experience, that I was too young, too inexperienced. The words "you're not CEO material" still echo in my mind, a painful reminder of the doubts that were cast upon me. But it wasn't just strangers who doubted me. Even those closest to me, my family and friends, expressed their skepticism. They would ask me questions like, "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Or, "Have you thought this through?" Their concerns, although well-intentioned, only added to the self-doubt that was already creeping in. There were times when I felt like giving up, like the weight of their skepticism was too much to bear. I recall sitting in my small apartment, surrounded by notes and prototypes, feeling like I was staring into an abyss. The fear of failure was suffocating me, making it hard to breathe. I questioned my own abilities, wondering if I was delusional to think that I could make this work. The internal conflict was raging, with one part of me urging me to push forward, and another part tempting me to throw in the towel. As I navigated this dark period, I began to realize the importance of resilience. I learned to cope with rejection, to use it as fuel to drive me forward. I reminded myself of why I started this journey in the first place, of the passion and conviction that had once burned so brightly within me. And although the doubts still lingered, I found a way to silence them, to push through the noise and keep moving forward. It was during this tumultuous time that I began to meet people who would change the course of my journey. I attended investor meetings, networking events, and conferences, always on the lookout for someone who might believe in me. And then, just when I thought that all hope was lost, I met someone who would become a crucial mentor, someone who saw the potential in me and my idea. But that's a story for another time, a story that would change everything. I still remember the feeling of defeat that lingered long after I was told I wasn't CEO material. It was as if the words had carved a permanent scar, echoing in my mind every time I doubted myself. But it was in those moments of darkness that I met her, my mentor, a woman with a wealth of experience and a keen eye for potential. Her office, nestled in the heart of the city, was a sanctuary of wisdom, filled with the scent of old books and the soft hum of determination. As I sat across from her, pouring out my story, she listened intently, her eyes sparkling with a fire that seemed to ignite a similar flame within me. She spoke of adaptability, of the importance of pivoting when the winds of change blew strong. Her words were not just advice. They were a blueprint for a new strategy, a new approach to my business. For the first time, I saw my company not as a static entity, but as a dynamic, living being that could evolve, grow, and thrive under the right guidance. With newfound resolve, I decided to pivot my business strategy. It wasn't an easy decision, but with my mentor's guidance, I began to see the world differently. I started attending new networking events, meeting people from diverse backgrounds and industries, each with their unique stories and insights. These venues, bustling with energy and innovation, became my playground, a place where ideas were born and nurtured. I introduced new team members, each chosen for their passion and creativity, and together we embarked on a journey of rediscovery. We questioned everything from our product to our mission, and in doing so, we found a new sense of purpose. The initial successes were exhilarating: a new client here, a positive review there, each one a testament to the power of change and the bravery of taking a different path. But as we stood on the cusp of this new chapter, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of uncertainty. Scaling my business while maintaining its core values seemed like a daunting task, a balancing act that required precision and wisdom. My mentor's words echoed in my mind: growth is not just about expanding, it's about evolving with integrity. I knew that the next challenge was looming, one that would test my resolve, my strategy, and my commitment to the very heart of my company. And yet, with the lessons of mentorship and pivot fresh in my mind, I felt a sense of readiness, a sense of anticipation for the journey ahead. I still remember the day I realized that my company's growth was not just about increasing revenue, but about building a team that could keep up with our expanding operations. We were hiring new people left and right, and I had to make sure that each one of them shared our vision and values. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to create a strong team that could help me take the company to the next level. As we scaled up, we moved into new offices that were modern and sleek, with an open layout that encouraged collaboration and creativity. The atmosphere was electric, with people buzzing around, brainstorming and working together to meet our ambitious goals. I made it a point to walk around the office every day, talking to my team members, listening to their ideas and concerns, and making sure that they had everything they needed to succeed. But with growth comes new challenges, and we soon found ourselves facing the daunting task of managing our expansion. We were opening new offices in different locations, and I had to make sure that our operations were streamlined and efficient. I spent countless hours on planes, traveling from one city to another, meeting with our teams and stakeholders, and making sure that everything was running smoothly. One of the biggest challenges I faced was balancing profit with ethical considerations. As a CEO, I had a responsibility to my shareholders to maximize profits, but I also had a responsibility to my employees, customers, and the environment to do what was right. I made a conscious decision to prioritize ethical business practices, even if it meant sacrificing some of our profits. I believed that in the long run, doing the right thing would pay off, and that our customers and employees would appreciate our commitment to ethics. I was lucky to have some amazing key team members who shared my vision and values. There was Sarah, our Chief Operating Officer, who was a genius when it came to streamlining operations and managing growth. There was Jack, our Head of Marketing, who was a creative genius and helped us build a brand that was both recognizable and respected. And there was Emily, our Head of HR, who made sure that our employees were happy and fulfilled. Together, we worked tirelessly to build a company that was not just successful, but also responsible and ethical. We implemented sustainable practices, donated to charities, and made sure that our employees were treated fairly and with respect. It wasn't always easy, but I knew that it was the right thing to do. As the company continued to grow, I started to think about the next step. We were getting bigger and bigger, and I knew that it was only a matter of time before we would have to go public. The thought both excited and terrified me. I knew that going public would bring a whole new level of scrutiny and responsibility, but I also knew that it would give us the opportunity to take our company to the next level. I was ready for the challenge, but I was also nervous about what the future held. Little did I know, the decision to go public would change everything. I still remember the day I decided to take my company public like it was yesterday. The decision-making process was grueling, filled with long nights and endless discussions with my team. We had successfully scaled our business, but going public was a whole different ball game. I had to consider the financial implications, the legal compliance, and the potential impact on our company culture. As I delved deeper into the process, I realized that going public wasn't just about raising capital. It was about becoming a part of something much bigger than ourselves. It was about being listed on a major stock exchange, being scrutinized by investors and the public, and being held to a higher standard of transparency and accountability. I recall walking into the stock exchange for the first time, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The atmosphere was electric, with screens flashing numbers and people rushing to and fro. I met with investment bankers and legal advisors who guided me through the complex process of preparation. We worked tirelessly to ensure that our financials were in order, that we were compliant with all regulatory requirements, and that our story was compelling enough to attract investors. One of the biggest challenges I faced was managing investor expectations. I had to balance their desire for growth and returns with the need to ensure that our company remained true to its values and mission. I spent countless hours preparing for meetings with potential investors, crafting a narrative that would resonate with them and convince them to join us on this journey. The road to IPO was paved with uncertainty, but I was driven by a fierce determination to succeed. I knew that this was a critical moment in our company's history, one that would define our future and shape our destiny. And so, I poured my heart and soul into it, making sure that every detail was taken care of, every box was ticked, and every contingency was planned for. As the IPO day approached, I could feel the tension building up. My team and I had worked tirelessly for months, and now it was time to see the fruits of our labor. We had done everything we could to prepare, but we knew that the outcome was far from certain. The market was unpredictable, and there were no guarantees of success. But I was ready for it. I had faced my fair share of challenges and setbacks, and I had learned to thrive under pressure. I knew that the next few days would be crucial, that they would determine the course of our company's history. And I was determined to make it happen, no matter what it took. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the game was about to begin. The question was, would we emerge victorious, or would we falter under the spotlight? Only time would tell. I still remember the sound of the opening bell. It's a sound that's etched in my memory forever. As I stood on the stock exchange floor, surrounded by my team, exchange officials, and media representatives, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment. We had done it, we had actually taken our company public. The months of preparation, the countless nights spent perfecting our pitch, the endless meetings with investors, it had all led to this moment. As the bell rang out, our stock began to trade, and the initial reaction was overwhelming. The demand was high, and our stock price soared. I watched in awe as the numbers flashed on the screen, my heart racing with excitement. This was it, this was the moment we had been working towards for so long. The feeling of validation was immense. All the doubts and naysayers who had told me I wasn't CEO material were silenced in this instant. The press conference that followed was a whirlwind of activity, with media representatives firing questions at me from all sides. I remember feeling a sense of calm, a sense of conviction, as I answered their questions. I knew our story, I knew our vision, and I was confident in our ability to execute. The questions ranged from our financial projections to our plans for expansion, and I answered each one with clarity and precision. As the day wore on, the reality of our situation began to sink in. We were no longer a private company, we were now a public entity, subject to the scrutiny of the market and the media. The volatility of the market was daunting, the constant fluctuation in our stock price a reminder that we were no longer in control. But I was undaunted. I knew that we had built a solid foundation and that our team was capable of navigating the challenges that lay ahead. As I looked out at the sea of faces, I felt a sense of gratitude to my team, to our investors, and to everyone who had supported us on this journey. We had achieved something special, something that few companies ever achieve. We had taken our company public, and we had done it with style. The feeling of pride and accomplishment was overwhelming, and I knew that this was just the beginning. We had a new chapter ahead of us, a chapter filled with challenges and opportunities, and I was excited to see what the future held. As the day drew to a close, I took a moment to reflect on our journey. From the early days of struggling to find our footing to the moment we rang the opening bell, it had been a wild ride. There had been ups and downs, twists and turns, but through it all we had persevered. And now, as we stood on the threshold of this new chapter, I knew that we were ready. We were ready to take on the challenges of being a public company, to navigate the complexities of the market, and to continue to grow and evolve. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: we were ready for whatever came next. I still remember the day we took our company public like it was yesterday. I was just 30 years old, and the rush of emotions was overwhelming. The feeling of validation, the sense of pride, and the weight of responsibility all mixed together in a swirl of excitement and trepidation. As I stood at the podium, ringing the bell to mark our IPO, I couldn't help but think about the journey that had brought us to this moment. As the CEO of a public company, I quickly learned that life was about to get a lot more complicated. The days of making decisions based solely on our team's vision and goals were behind us. Now we had to consider the expectations of public investors, the analyst community, and the constant scrutiny of the media. Every move we made was under a microscope, and the pressure to perform was palpable. I recall my first quarterly earnings report like it was a baptism by fire. The stakes were high, and the preparation was intense. Our team worked tirelessly to ensure that every detail was accounted for, every number was accurate, and every word was carefully chosen. I remember standing in front of the mirror, rehearsing my opening statement, trying to anticipate every possible question from the investors and analysts on the call. The investor calls themselves were a new level of challenge. The questions were tough, the criticism was harsh, and the expectations were sky-high. I had to develop a thick skin, learning to differentiate between constructive feedback and mere criticism. But with each call, I grew more confident, more articulate, and more comfortable with the scrutiny. Managing public perception and company reputation became an all-consuming task. Every decision, every move, and every statement had to be carefully considered, weighing the potential impact on our image and our shareholders. The line between transparency and discretion was often blurred, and I had to navigate this delicate balance with precision. As I sat in our corporate headquarters, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of our team, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and ownership. This was our company, and we were determined to make it a success. The investor meetings, the board meetings, and the endless discussions with our management team all blended together in a blur of activity. But amidst all the chaos, I began to realize the importance of transparency and accountability. As a public CEO, I was no longer just responsible to our team or our investors. I was responsible to the public at large. Every decision, every action, and every word had to be guided by a sense of integrity, honesty, and fairness. The strategic decisions we made under this increased scrutiny were not always easy. There were times when we had to make tough choices, balancing short-term gains against long-term goals. There were times when we had to swallow our pride, admit our mistakes, and adjust our course. But through it all, I tried to stay focused on our core values, our mission, and our vision. As I look back on that journey, I am reminded of the lessons I learned along the way. I learned about resilience, about adaptability, and about the importance of staying true to oneself. I learned that being a public CEO is not just about leading a company. It's about leading by example, inspiring others, and making a positive impact on the world. And as I reflect on the journey, I am filled with a sense of gratitude, humility, and awe, knowing that I was given the chance to live this incredible story. As I sit here in my personal retreat, surrounded by the tranquility of nature, I am compelled to reflect on the journey that has brought me to this moment. The memories of my early days as a young entrepreneur, filled with uncertainty and self-doubt, now seem like a distant past. I recall the countless times I was told I wasn't CEO material, that I was too young, too inexperienced, or too naive. But I didn't let those words define me. Instead, I used them as fuel to drive my passion and determination. I think about the team that has been with me throughout this journey, their faces etched in my mind like a vivid canvas of memories. There's Sarah, our marketing lead, who joined us when we were still a small startup. She remembers the late nights and early mornings, the endless cups of coffee, and the sacrifices we made to get to where we are today. Then there's Jack, our technical lead, who has been instrumental in shaping our product and technology. He speaks about the early days with a sense of nostalgia, recalling the struggles and the triumphs that have made us stronger. As I listen to their stories, I am reminded of the impact my journey has had on others. My family, who have been my rock throughout this journey, have also been affected by my decisions. My wife, Rachel, has been a constant source of support, encouraging me to pursue my dreams even when the road ahead seemed uncertain. My children, too, have grown up watching me work tirelessly towards my goals, and I hope that my journey has taught them the value of perseverance and hard work. As I reflect on my personal growth and the lessons I've learned, I am struck by the realization that legacy is not just about what we achieve, but also about the impact we have on others. I think about the future and the goals I still want to achieve. I want to use my platform to give back, to make a difference in the world that goes beyond just our company's success. I want to inspire others to pursue their passions, to empower them to make a positive impact on their communities. The team celebration that we had recently, after our company went public, was a poignant reminder of how far we've come. We gathered in a large hall, surrounded by our colleagues, friends, and family, and shared stories of our journey. It was a moment of pure joy, a celebration of our collective efforts and achievements. As I looked around the room, I felt a deep sense of gratitude and humility, knowing that I am not alone in this journey. As I continue to reflect on my journey, I am filled with a sense of purpose and responsibility. I know that I have a platform now, a voice that can be heard by many. And I am determined to use it to make a positive difference, to leave a legacy that goes beyond just my company's success. I am excited for the future, for the opportunities that lie ahead, and for the chance to inspire others to join me on this journey. As I stood at the podium, accepting the award for my company's outstanding contribution to the community, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and fulfillment. It was moments like these that reminded me of why I had worked so tirelessly to build my business from the ground up. The applause of the crowd, the smiles of my team, and the gratitude of the people we had helped. It all came together to create a sense of purpose that went beyond just making a profit. I thought back to the early days, when it was just me and a handful of colleagues working out of a small office, trying to make a name for ourselves in the industry. We had faced countless challenges, overcome countless obstacles, and had come out on top. And now, as I looked out at the sea of faces, I knew that our success was not just about us. It was about the impact we had on the world around us. That's why I had become so passionate about giving back and paying forward. I had been fortunate enough to achieve my dreams, and now it was time for me to help others do the same. I had started working with philanthropic partners, organizations that shared my vision for creating positive change in the community. Together, we had launched initiatives to support education, healthcare, and economic development initiatives that had already begun to bear fruit. But it wasn't just about writing checks or attending charity events. I had also made it a point to mentor and support aspiring entrepreneurs, people who were just starting out on their own journeys. I remembered what it was like to be in their shoes, to face rejection and doubt, and to struggle to make ends meet. And I knew that with the right guidance and support, they could achieve their own success stories. One of my mentees, a young woman named Sarah, had come to me with an idea for a sustainable energy startup. I had seen the fire in her eyes, the passion and determination that drove her to make a difference. And I had known that I had to help her. So I had taken her under my wing, introduced her to my network, and provided her with the resources she needed to get her business off the ground. Now her company was thriving, and she was making a real impact in the world. As I looked out at the crowd, I felt a sense of pride and responsibility. I knew that I had a platform, a voice that could be used to advocate for important causes. And I was determined to use it, to speak out on issues that mattered, and to inspire others to do the same. Whether it was fighting for social justice, protecting the environment, or promoting economic equality, I was committed to being a force for good, to leaving a legacy that would outlast me. The award I had just received was not just a recognition of my own achievements. It was a reminder that our work was far from over. There were still challenges to be overcome, still injustices to be fought, and still people to be helped. And I was ready to face them head-on, to continue pushing the boundaries of what was possible, and to inspire others to do the same. As I left the podium, I was met with a sea of congratulations and well wishes. But I knew that the real work was just beginning. I had a vision for the future, a future where business and social responsibility went hand in hand, where success was not just about profit, but about purpose. And I was excited to see what the next chapter would hold, not just for me, but for the world around us. As I stood on the rooftop, overlooking the city skyline, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. Taking my company public at 30 was a dream come true, and the feeling of validation that came with it was overwhelming. But as I gazed out at the horizon, I knew that this was just the beginning. The real question was, what's next? I thought back to the journey that had brought me here, the late nights, the early mornings, the countless setbacks and failures. But I also thought about the lessons I had learned, the people I had met, and the experiences I had had. And I knew that I wasn't done yet. I had a responsibility to use my knowledge and expertise to make a difference, to leave a lasting legacy. I started to explore new business ventures, looking for opportunities to innovate and disrupt industries. I met with potential partners, people who shared my vision and my passion for making a difference. We discussed ideas, brainstormed solutions, and imagined a future that was brighter, more sustainable, and more equitable. At the same time, I knew that I had to think about my personal and professional legacy. I wanted to make sure that the company I had built would continue to thrive long after I was gone. I started to work on a succession plan, identifying talented young leaders who could take the reins and drive the company forward. I also began to think about my own role, how I could continue to contribute to the company and the community, even as I stepped back from the day-to-day operations. As I delved deeper into my plans, I realized that I had a unique opportunity to pass on the lessons I had learned to the next generation of entrepreneurs. I started to mentor young startups, sharing my experiences and offering guidance and advice. I also began to work with educational institutions, developing programs and curricula that would help to foster innovation and entrepreneurship. Through it all, I remained committed to my core values, my passion for innovation and making a difference. I knew that the future was uncertain, but I was excited about the possibilities. I was excited to see where my journey would take me next, to explore new frontiers and to push the boundaries of what was possible. As I looked out at the city, I felt a sense of anticipation, a sense of wonder. The next chapter of my life was about to begin, and I was ready to take on whatever came next. I was ready to innovate, to disrupt, and to make a difference. The future was bright, and I was excited to see what it held.